Hey, Algebra, let's take a look at graphing lines. Learning target for today, you'll be able to use a table to make a graph. So here's a table. We're going to plot these points. In this case, we've been given all of the points in the table. We just need to put them onto the graph. So I'm going to start at the top here. In a table, this one is labeled with the x and the y. The x and y coordinate need to go together to make one point. So I got -1 and 5. -1, and the x-axis is going to describe the sideways location, and the 5 in red, that y-coordinate, is going to describe the up and down location. So I need to go left to -1 and then up to 5. Here's my first point. Next one I'll do in blue, 0, 3. So I'm going to go side to side, 0 up by 3, 1, 1. Uh, get a little bit more space. 2, -1. So I'm going to go to the right 2 spaces and then down to -1. And running out of colors, we'll do this one in yellow. 3, -3. So I'm going to go right 3 spaces and then down to -3. And okay, let's take a look at another example. So this time I am given part of a table and an equation to use to complete the table. So the directions ask me to fill in the t-table below for the equation, then graph the line on the grid. So my equation is y equals 3x minus 6. The x coordinates have been given to me, so I need to use these x coordinates, -1, 0, and 1, to find the y coordinate that goes with them. So I'm going to take that equation and we're going to do this first one, -1, the first x value of -1. I'm going to put that into the equation. So I've copied out the equation ahead of time with an empty set of parentheses where the x used to be, and that's where I will put my x value. So the parentheses help me remember to keep that negative sign attached to the one. So it's not subtraction, it's actually multiplication by a -1. Follow the correct order of operations. So multiply 3 times -1 to get -3, and then I have to subtract 6. -3 minus 6 is -9. And then I'm going to take that next x coordinate of 0 and put that into the same spot of another copy of that equation. So 3 multiplied by 0 is 0, and then I have to do 0 minus 6 to get an answer of -6. So my y coordinate is going to be -6. And then lastly, this x value of 1, I'm going to put that into my equation. 3 multiplied by 1 is 3, and then 3 minus 6 gives me -3. -3 is going to go here. So I have a graph down here. I'm going to graph this in a minute. Before I look at the graph, let's go back to the directions. So these directions ask me to select 2 points from my table to create the graph. So on WAMAP, the computer is going to draw the line for us, but we need to pick 2 points to click so that it knows what direction to draw that line. So you can pick any points you want. I mean, there's 3 of them in the table here. I will go ahead and use the first one and the last one, just because I'm going to pick 2 of them. So -1, -9, it's going to go onto the graph in purple. And then the other point I chose was 1, -3. I graphed that one in green. So there you can see in the table, -1, 3, or sorry, 1, -3. Wow, it's easy to get those things confused. We got to pay attention. Underneath this graph is the drawing tool. And so just to point this out, this tool, we know what it means. It kind of explains what the computer is doing. So it says draw, and then it shows you a picture of how the computer is drawing this line for us. So the 2 red dots are the dots that I need to click. So that's the 2 points I chose out of that table. And then once I click on those 2 points, the computer will draw a line through them. Right. And so anytime you see underneath the graph this drawing icon, that's how it's going to draw the graph. Okay, different example. What if we're given an equation and a completely blank table, and we're to graph the equation by completing the table first and then use the table to create the graph. So if you're going to pick your own points, you only get to pick half of the points. You can choose anything you want in the X column. Anything you want in the X column. The catch here is that depending on what numbers you choose for the X coordinate, it might make your Y coordinate difficult to find or difficult to graph. So we do want to make sure that it's going to be on the graph. We don't know that ahead of time, but if we pick something and it ends up being off the graph, that's not going to work because we won't be able to graph it. And just some helpful pointers here. When you're selecting your X values, smaller numbers are going to be easier to work with, whether they're positive or negative. 0 is going to be the easiest, followed by 1, and depending on your comfort level with negative numbers might be easy, depending on the equation in the graph, or smaller positive numbers. If there's a fraction involved, this one doesn't have a fraction, but if there were a fraction, then I would use, my suggestion to you would be to use whatever the denominator of that fraction is, use multiples of that number as my X choice. Okay, so here I'm going to just choose some numbers. I'm going to go start with 0. I'm going to maybe try some negative numbers. So I'm going to leave space above it to put a negative number. So I want I like to keep my negative numbers at the top of the table and then get larger as I go down the table. So if I put 0 as an X value, then I'm going to do -0. Well, -0 doesn't actually exist. The -0 is the same as +0. So this is just going to be 0 plus 5. Oops, and that equals 5. Okay, so 0 and 5, I can find that on the graph, but that is right at the top of this graph. So if I get the y coordinate that's any higher than that, it will not fit on my graph. So let's see what happens if I do -1. Let me get that 5 back. Okay. What happened to my 5? Stay put, 5. Okay, let's try -1 in here. So when I put the -1 inside those empty parentheses, I have to make whatever's inside the parentheses gets negativized, right? So really that doesn't mean to make it negative because it already is negative. What that means is I'm multiplying by an invisible -1. Or another way of thinking of that negative sign is a negative sign just means opposite. Let me get rid of this 1. And so I put a green -1 inside the parentheses, this purple negative sign outside. We can think of that just meaning opposite. So instead of a -1, it's going to be the opposite of that, the +1. And then I have to add 5. 1 plus 5 is 6. 6. Okay, -1, 6 is not going to fit on my graph. I could find where it would be, but it's going to be up here off the edge of my graph. So I can't really graph that if it doesn't actually fit on my graph. I mean, on a piece of paper, I could draw it. I'd just, go off the edge of the graph and draw it there. But if I have to put this onto a graph on a wall map, if it's off the edge of the graph, I can't do it. So I would want to select a different number. I tried -1 and I did it correctly. It just isn't going to work. So I slide these numbers up, and let's just go the other direction. I go to +1, and then I'll just do 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 1 first. So that'll be -1, and then I have to add 5. That gives me 4. 1, 4. I can put that on the graph. Is right here. Change colors. So let's do this one in green. So I'm going to do 2 next. Bring that over here. So that's going to give me -2 plus 5, which is 3. 2, 3. It's going to be right here. Let's do this one in purple. So we're -3, and then I have to add 5. So that's going to give me an output of 2 over 3 up 2. And then my last one, 4. That's going to give me -4, and then I have to add 5, so it's going to give me an output of 1. So over to 4, up to 1, over to the right 4, up 1. And here's my graph. So those dots do make a perfectly straight line. I am not asked to graph a line in this case. I'm going to plot the points. If the directions ask me to draw the line, I can draw the line. If WAMAP uses the drawing tool where I select 2 dots and it draws the line for me, that's awesome. Okay, let's take a look at one last thing. What if the line has already been drawn and I'm asked to find the coordinates? It says use the graph to complete the ordered pairs. Okay, so a graphed line is actually an infinite collection of points. This particular graph does not have any dots labeled, but this is just a drawing convention. When we graph a line, the line just represents so many dots packed so closely together that it would be an impossible task to draw all of those dots. And so we just say, look, we'll just draw a line instead of like drawing each of those dots individually. So there are an infinite number of dots on this graph. None of them have been labeled with an actual dot yet, but we could do that if just to help us visualize where these things are on the graph. So let's look at what we have. So the first at the top of the table, so I have -3 that's given to me as the x value. It's the first number inside the ordered pair. So what I need to do is on the x-axis, that's the one that goes sideways, I need to find where -3 would be, right between -2 and -4. And then I'm going to read down to where that line is. Okay, and so I can put a dot there just to help me visualize. I need to find the y coordinate of that point. So the x coordinate of -3, go down to where the line is, and then I can read across what is the y value right there. So that's at -4. Okay, the next, I'll do in blue. The next value in the table, I have been given the y coordinate. It's the second number inside the set of parentheses. I need to find the x, that's the blank, but the y is +2. So I'm going to go on the y-axis, I'm going to go up to +2, and I'm going to find where the line is at that height. Well, in this case, it's right on the y-axis, so I don't actually have to go left or right at all. That point is going to have an x coordinate of 0. I didn't go left, I didn't go right. I just went straight up. So the first number is always the sideways location, and I did nothing sideways, and then I just went straight up. So 0, 2. Next one down in the table has a y value of 4. So what I would do is go to the graph, go up to a height of 4, and then I'm going to go either left or right to find where that line is at. In this case, it's to the right. And now I need to find what is the x coordinate that goes along with that pink dot. So the pink dot went sideways to the right by 1. So this is the wrong color. We'll have to fix that. So we're going to put an x coordinate of 1 right there. And then a lot of highlighted colors, so maybe I'll just use a pen. Okay, so the next one, I'll do this one in purple. So x coordinate of 2. So on the x-axis, I'm going to go across to +2 to the right, and then I'm going to follow the graph up to where the line is. I'll just put a little purple dot right here. And then I need to find what is the y coordinate at that point. So if I read straight across, that's at a height of 6. And then the last one, I'll do this one in red. So the x value is -1, so I'm going to go to the left until I find -1 and put a, I don't actually have to go up or down at all to find the graph. The line is right there crossing the x-axis at -1. So I need to get the y value for this red dot. And I did not have to go up or down at all to find the line. That means my y value is 0. And that is how I can read points off of a graph.